Hey YouTube, welcome back to Dwayne's World. So do I have to verticut my lawn? What are the advantages? How important is it? And how often should I be doing it? Well, we're going to get into verticut today. You want to find out how it's going to go and get the answer to those questions? Well, you better stay tuned. So welcome back to Season 4, Episode 11, here on Dwayne's World. And I'm very excited about this episode, just like I am all my episodes, because we'll be using the California Trimmer Catalyst, but with the Verticut Cartridge, which I'm definitely a big fan of. So in today's episode, I'm going to take a look at that Verticut Cartridge in action, but we'll be also looking to answer a couple questions. So how important is it? Do I need to do it? How often? What are the benefits? And what happens if I don't have one? How am I going to handle my lawn? All right, so before we get into any of those questions and or the Verticut action, let's go and take a look here at the lawn and see what it's currently looking like. All right, guys, this is going to be a quick update here on the lawn. As you guys can see, got quite a bit more of a green up, and it's definitely coming along. Thinking about another week or two, as the temperatures start to go up, be in really good shape. Fairly happy with the color in green. I still feel like the lawn is a little bit thicker than I would like. So you know what that means. We're going to break out the catalyst. We're going to use the Verticutter. That's why we got it, right? And that's going to help thin out the lawn. And I think it's really going to help to be an integral part of my strategy for this growing year. So what we're going to be doing is going to go ahead and remove the 10-blade reel. And we're going to be putting in our Verticut cartridge. So in order to make that happen, got to go ahead, take off the side cover here, and exchange. And we'll get started on swapping out the cartridge. All right, guys, so I got my drill and the bit the California Trimmer sends you to be able to remove the side cover. All right, guys, remember, all we got to do is remove the belt, take out these two 13mm bolts, and that way we'll be able to pull out the cartridge. So now we'll go ahead and just remove the belt, remove it from the tensioner here, and we'll go ahead, take it off the pulley there, and that way it'll give us a little bit of room here to work. And now I'm going to go ahead and just remove this 13mm bolt, and again, we got one on the opposite side as well. So one of the things I consider kind of an optional step, basically up to you, because the 25-inch catalyst, especially the 10-blade reel, is such a heavy cartridge, a lot of times it's difficult to be able to pull straight out and up. And a lot of times I end up pulling up, not because I want to, just because of the sheer weight. So what I find it helps a little bit easier for me to be able to get out my cartridges and put them in is to remove the side cover here. Now, and remember, the side cover here is held down by 4 10mm bolts. I go ahead and just remove the two in the front, loosen the ones in the back, and I'm able to pull off the side cover. All right, so now we should be able to pull out the cartridge. So as you saw there, I had a little bit of difficulty being able to pull out that 10-blade reel, just because of the fact that sometimes when I'm lifting up on it being so heavy, I might pull more to the right or to the left, and it starts to get a little bit jarred, making it a little more difficult to be able to pull it out. But now that it's out, we can go ahead and put in our Verticut cartridge. Line it up in between the frame rails, and I think that's good. All right, so first thing we're going to do is go ahead and put on our bracket here that basically holds the pulley in place. All right, one thing I'll recommend, guys, is do not use your impact to tighten everything down. Do that by hand. That way, you don't strip out any of these screws. Now, I'm sure you could always get a replacement, but why go through all that? And our 13mm bolt here that holds in the reel. All right, guys, so let me point this out, and I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail in a minute here. Is this bolt here is hand tight. And one of the things you can notice here, whenever I'm lifting up on the cartridge, as you guys can see there, the bolt is going up and down. So why is that important, and why do I even point that out? Well, I remember when I purchased my catalyst, I think it was like the second or third mow using that 10-blade cartridge. One of the things I noticed was that the fact that it was cutting lower on one side than the other. And this is a little bit different than when it came to the actual unevenness that you sometimes get because your Bermuda is so thick. What I'm talking about is I can look down and see that every one of my passes, it's lower on one side or the other. And I can't remember which side it was, whether it was the left or right, but it was consistent when I was looking at my lawn. Now, one of the things that I noticed, though, when I was showing you guys that 13mm bolt there is some adjustment. And I don't mean adjustment like from the standpoint that it's measured. No, what I mean is if you're noticing any type of unevenness, you may want to go back and look at that cartridge and see if there's any play up or down. And if you're having to notice that on that particular side, it's a little bit lower, my recommendation would be to hold up the cartridge, then tighten the bolt down, and hold it just slightly higher on that side than you had it previously set. Or the opposite, where maybe it was locked in an upward position, but let it just kind of rest on its own weight and tighten it down there. Hopefully that helps you guys if you're having any type of problem. It's just something you may want to check. And I thought it was important to bring up, especially because of the fact that you're taking that cartridge in and out, and you may experience it during one mow and not the other when you swap out that cartridge. So again, in a future video, I'll probably talk about this in a lot more detail, but I hope this helps you out. Now, one of the things I'll tell you is it really seems like on my particular mower, it's mostly here on the right side. I do not have as much of a variance there on the left side. Now, currently I do have a bolt on the other side. Now, this is what I would do if I was noticing that it was cutting lower on this side than that side. Being that I have my bolt already started on that side, that shouldn't move very much. But on this particular side, for whatever reason on my mower, if I notice that it's actually cutting lower, I'm going to raise the bolt a little bit, then tighten it down. Or if I'm noticing that it's actually cutting too low, I just want to make sure I tighten it down in the lowest possible position here where it's currently set. Being that I have the Verticutter in, really doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go ahead and tighten it down. All right, guys, so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and set my height of cut now. Now, again, I always use my little rivet here. Kind of just press through to give me an accurate viewing of the actual height of cut. And I think what I want to go to is I'm going to go ahead and drop it down to a 1/2 inch. Pretty close, a little bit more. That's pretty close there. All right, guys, so I'm over at my workbench here. I just want to show you something really quickly here before we get back to the video. This is something, again, I'm going to probably talk about in one of my future videos, more than likely probably with my backlapping video on the California Trimmer Catalyst, which I know all of you guys are waiting to see. Now, one of the things I did is I actually reached out to Jim over at California Trimmer and kind of told him what I told you guys about the bolt there on the real cartridge and whether or not he believed that it actually would make a difference when it comes to height of cut. He did not necessarily believe that it should have had a significant difference when it came to the height of cut, but what he did is he actually sent me a height of cut adjustment bar just for me to be able to prove my theory. Now, I believe this looks very similar to the height of cut adjustment bar that comes on the Fortis, the sister or brother of the California Trimmer Catalyst. Now, what it also does include is a little ruler here, so that way you can measure the distance on this height of cut adjustment bar. All right, so when I do my backlapping video, I'll probably show you guys in a little more detail how this thing actually works. But what I did when I got it, I wasn't so much concerned about the height of cut. I was wanting to make sure it was the same from left to right. And this bar actually showed me that I was level when I did what I did when it came to those bolts. All right, guys, so going to take a look here. If you look, that's all dead debris, stuff we absolutely do not want in the lawn. Let me kind of take you over here to the lawn itself and show you guys what type of work the Verticutter has been doing to this point. Now, hopefully it's coming out on video, but as you guys can see, or hopefully you can see, that there's lines that are formed by the Verticutter. Now, even if I come closer down to the turf here, hopefully it's coming out a little clearer. All right, and kind of a different angle here. Hopefully it's still coming out on video. Again, I verticut up to about this point there. There's the mower there at the end. So all this part of the lawn here has been verticut. So that, let me go ahead and talk to you guys about why it's so important and what are the advantages to verticutting. All right, guys, so I'm going to kind of just jump in here on the Verticut and kind of answer some of those questions that we talked about earlier in the episode. And I think the first question that we should be answering is what happens if I don't have a Verticutter? How do I handle my lawn? And I'm really going to be in trouble. And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. You do not have to have a Verticutter in order to have a beautiful lawn. But if you don't, what you'll probably need to do to keep your lawn really looking its best, generally we do a scalp during the actual green up of our lawn, but you'll probably need to do a mid-season scalp in order to really thin out the turf. So with that being said, let's kind of talk about the importance of why you do want to verticut or do that mid-season scalp. The purpose of either one is to really thin out the turf. What happens with Bermuda, because of the way it grows through rhizomes and stolons, can sometimes grow out of control in a sense where it gets so thick. And as your lawn has a more difficult time getting water, getting nutrients down to the soil, especially if you're feeding your lawn. Now, one of the things that also to keep in mind that tends to happen when your lawn gets very thick, especially if you're real mowing, you'll tend to get some unevenness in your cuts because your mower is almost floating on top of the grass. Now, with the mid-season scalp, though, when you do that, yes, you are thinning out your turf. However, it's going to look ugly for a couple weeks before it actually is able to grow back up. But then after that, you'll be in good shape. And that's kind of how you would handle it if you do not have a Verticutter. But for those of us that are fortunate enough to have a Verticutter, the advantage is you do not have to go through that ugly stage. You can kind of keep your lawn in check throughout the growing season. So what are some of the other benefits to verticutting? Well, when you have a verticutter, it also helps remove dead debris from the lawn in addition to thinning out your turf. So when you're able to thin out the turf, you basically are minimizing that floating effect that you'll get had you not verticut throughout the growing season. Now let's go ahead and talk about how often we should be verticutting. My recommendation would be about once a month. But the nice thing about verticutting is when you do it, and especially when you include it with the cleanup pass, you can't even tell you really verticutted, to be honest. Now, one of the things I know we all love in the lawn care community is stripe action. We absolutely want to burn in those stripes. Well, you got to remember, whenever you're burning in stripes, or whenever you're laying down stripes, I should say, you're laying the grass either one way or the other. It can also be encouraging our grass to grow in that direction or that direction versus just straight up. So what the Verticutter will do is it basically interrupt your lawn from being able to do that, which is much more healthier for the grass for it to grow more naturally versus to one direction or the other. When you're verticutting once a month, one of the things that is important to remember though is you do not always want to be verticutting in the same direction. You do want to change it up. Maybe one month you're going north to south, the other month you're going east to west, the other month you're going northeast to southwest. However you want to do it, you just want to absolutely make sure you are changing the direction each time you actually verticut. That'll really help you guys get the full effect when it comes to verticutting. All right, so with all those things being said, let's get back to doing the verticut. All right, guys, so there we have it. All the dead debris, including a palm branch as well. But that's all stuff that came out of the lawn. That's all stuff you do not want in the lawn. But that's where the catalyst comes in to clean out all that debris. Pretty warm today, though. But we need the heat in order to bring the rest of my lawn out of dormancy. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and take a look here and see how well California Trimmer Catalyst did. Not too bad, not too bad. I'm going to turn around like normal. All right, so there we are. Again, a little more that has to come out of green up, but stripe action. Sun's not in the best position, but looking pretty on point if you ask me. You know, the point of today's mow, though, as we all know, was not necessarily for the stripe action. It was to really be able to get down into the turf, get out a lot of that dead debris, and that way, when we get our full green up, throw down some fertilizer, hit it with some water, then the party will be on. That's right. You know, the Verticutter, I have to remind myself when I start to use it again, how great of a cartridge it actually is. Now, it actually kind of brings up something that I keep getting asked from time to time is, Dwayne, do I get a scarifier? Do I get a Verticutter? What if I can't get both at the same time? Which one should I get first? And I got to tell you, there's different schools of thought. I absolutely love the scarifier. Just because it gets out so much of that dead debris, and that really helps your lawn look its best. Because believe it or not, that does affect how green your lawn looks when you're sitting there with a lot of that debris that's yellow underneath the green turf. So you clean that out, it definitely makes a big difference. However, the Verticutter really helps keep your lawn in check. So that way it doesn't become overly thick. And that's going to affect your overall quality of cut when you're getting deeper into the growing season, just because of the fact that we all know Bermuda loves to grow sideways and really thicken up, which really makes it the alpha grass. But overall, if I had to choose, and I did choose, I chose the scarifier first, and then I went with the Verticutter, but not too far apart. But I gotta tell you, not having one or the other, I would always feel like I'm missing something. So if you can, pick up both. Now, California Trimmer does also offer a couple other cartridges. I don't necessarily know if I need necessarily those. However, the aerating cartridge does appeal to me. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It's always fun being able to put it together for you guys. Give me a like. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Over 2,200 followers at this point. Absolutely love you guys. Thank you so much. Remember, as always, be excellent. Party on.